We're excited.
Are we excited?
We're excited
Well,
about something. We're on the air.
well,
Ooh, let's watch this. Want to see something really cool?
what's that?
Ooh, look at that. All right, never mind.
Okay. Well,
I learned how to do one thing today on our thing. Hey, by the
yeah.
way,
Well,
New York City, baby, November 17th, Dim Sum Darling. I'm going to be there
am
because
I
it's the
your
grand
darling or
opening.
not? Does that mean I'm gonna?
Well,
You have you invited me? You're gonna pay the ticket,
yeah,
and the
sure,
hotel,
you'll come.
the
Yeah,
whole
sure.
shebang?
So yeah, someone has to do the dishes. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, Dim Sum Darling opens November 17th. They have a soft opening on the 10th, and then on November 17th, they're gonna whatchamacallit, and my
Yeah.
favorite word, they're gonna have their grand opening at the
Yeah.
Urban Hawker, 135 West 50th Street. It's not a paid endorsement, it just happens to be a place I like eating, and they let me try the food, so I love it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there you go. All
Well,
right, now we
talking about
need to
paid,
guess.
endorsements. We've
Yes,
paid a
yes.
lot of money to get this guy on again. Or,
Millions of
or,
pesos.
or has he paid us? I can't remember one or the other.
I always forget. And Rachel was going to join us, Kimchi Chick, but she couldn't because she had something very pressing today.
Yeah.
I think she had to do her hair. I don't know. You know how
Okay.
girls are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the cabbage had to be pressed. Who knows?
There you go for the kimchi.
But so yeah,
Do you
I've
forget who
got.
was on
Oh,
the show?
yeah. No, I'm not saying that. I've got my telephone going off. That's
No.
something completely different.
Well,
I've forgotten who's on the show. Yeah, he's probably left us by now anyway.
he's still
But
there, the world voice
yeah,
guy.
yeah, okay. So look, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, the one and only Rob Vega.
Oh, I see what you did there. I saw I was backstage and then I was on stage. That's kind of
Look
cool.
at you. Now you're
Yeah.
like, you're here with
got
the,
it.
yeah, I know.
I was chatting away and they were just like ignoring me. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, because I'm not on stage. This is
There
so
you
weird.
go. This is so cool.
This is some high-tech stuff. This is next gen. Wow.
This is
Yeah.
easy stuff for us to figure out how to
Damn.
use. And the really cool, one day we can
Very
do a
cool.
live show. We can actually we did a live show, and that was
Split
interesting.
screens and everything. It's
Watch,
fantastic.
watch this. Got that split screen.
Wow.
Ooh, I got this
Okay.
split screen.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Steve's favorite. That's Stephen's favorite.
Is that
This
Steve's
one?
favorite? All right.
This
we
one,
trust
yeah, this
Steve.
is-
he loves
This is
that.
the perfect. This is the perfect screen. I don't know why you guys don't like this screen. I don't
Yeah.
get it.
I'm happy with it. I don't
There you
care.
go.
Wind
Yeah,
beneath my
look,
wings, There we
But
go.
wait,
looks-
you want to see something even cooler? Watch this one. Watch this one.
Ooh.
Ooh. I know,
Yeah.
right?
Is
Yeah.
Scare
that
the
what?
audience.
Oh, okay.
We could do.
Did you
Yeah,
just
we have
blur
all
me?
these.
All right, fine. Okay, good.
Yes,
Oh,
I
I
did.
think you're already blurred.
Yes.
Am I already blurred?
Yes.
Okay, all right, fine.
Saw
That's
the
probably
medication.
best.
There you go.
That's probably best. All right, that's
So how have
fine.
you been, my friend? What's up?
Yeah, it's been quite a couple of weeks. I mean, I like to be positive, but man, there's just been so many silly things going on. A lot of people have passed on. I thought 2020
Right.
was a bad year, but it looks like 2022 is not great. It's crazy because you realize it's
When's that going to
2022.
be then? When's 2022 going to happen then?
We're here now, David.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome. It's
Sorry.
2020 part 2.
That's
There
right.
you go.
Or if you're Jewish, it's like
2022.
5743, I think. It's because we count from day one. We don't.
Yeah, you don't do the whole
Yeah, it's
BC,
too hard for us to
AD
do the
thing.
the
All right.
BCE and the CE and the
yeah.
MOUSE, and there's a
It's
lot
too
of
confusing. It's
Yeah,
too confusing. Exactly.
ACDC. That's not it's like.
Sure, gotta love the
People
ACDC.
right now have no idea what we're talking about. But anyway,
I know.
No,
that's
you were
fine.
talking. You were
Never do.
talking about the fact that you were being bloody miserable.
And it's
bloody
2022.
miserable.
And it's
Yeah.
2022.
I don't know. Is it me? It just seems like there is just so much. There's so much negative stuff in the news
No, there
and
isn't.
everywhere.
Don't be so negative about it.
Hey, Lulu won the election
crazy.
in Brazil. That was positive, and they didn't have a civil war because what's his face said he's going to acquiesce the power.
Yeah.
Bolsonaro, really?
Yeah.
Is that
Literally,
All those unhappy Brazilians are going to move to South Africa now.
But there's a reason why I bring that up. The reason I bring it up, because you see, I think it's the whole story. News is negative. It has to be negative because that's how people work. We're drawn to negative stuff. I mean, Don Henley wrote that song. What was it? Dirty Laundry. Right. People like that. I don't think they like good news. It's boring. It doesn't sell. And that's not just me saying that. That is just generally accepted. That
I think Rupert Murdoch.
Well,
Rupert
Yeah,
Murdoch and Fox, I think,
exactly,
have proven
exactly.
that negative news is what you call
It
it.
does. It
can I just
sells.
jump in here and ask
I don't
if
know,
it's not
can you?
if it's not you saying it, who is it saying it? Because you
If
said it
not
wasn't you
what?
saying it. You said it wasn't you just saying it. But I
Quoting.
think
Yeah.
you
Oh,
think it
there you
was
go.
just you.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Semantics. Yes, I did
Oh,
say it.
you're
I quoted it.
anti-Semitic? That's
Pass-
not good. You
I
can't be
passed it
anti-Semitic.
No,
on.
romantic.
Yes.
I'm an old
Oh,
romantic.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
dyslexic. I can't
I
hear
feel
too
like I'm in
well.
an English lesson here. It's crazy. Anyway,
From the South African, no less. The English
well,
guy.
there
Yeah.
you go.
I know.
Well, I'm
Well,
only. I think that part of me is. So I'm a bit of a hybrid, to be
That's good.
honest.
yeah.
I remember when I lived in that wonderful city. Hang on, here we go. Ching, New York City.
Yes,
Did you get
baby,
that?
we made some
There
more
we go.
money.
You
So-
don't get paid,
I-
royalty. You don't get paid, unfortunately. It's only Stephen
No,
seems
it's
to
fine.
cut.
Steve's saving it up for me when I get there.
He
It's fine.
seems
It's
to
all
have
good.
cut the deal for himself and cut us all out.
New York money job. There you go.
Well,
Boom.
you know, I'm a New Yorker. What can
But I
say?
had somebody who came to me and they said to me, I don't know if I've mentioned this in this podcast before. I'm going to say it again anyway.
Yeah.
They said to me, where are you from? And I said, I'm from South Africa. And they said, no, you're not from South Africa. South Africans don't talk like that. And I went, well, I was born in the UK. Oh, you're a Brit. And I said, I'm not really. No, it's not. And then I realized I was a bit of both. So there you go. I've got 1 foot there, 1 foot here. When I'm speaking to my family and friends in the UK, you know, the accent sort of tightens up and I get sort of, hey, whatever.
Right.
And when I'm here, I get a little bit more like this, you see. And it's the most extraordinary thing. There's this imperialist colonist inside of me. It's very weird. Very strange.
No, I got you one better. My wife's from
Mhm.
Singapore. So you've talked to
Mhm.
my wife, she talks like a normal person, right? She talks
Yep.
normal. The
Yep.
minute she gets on the phone with her friends or if we're together for dinner with people from Singapore, all of a sudden it goes from English to Singaporean into Mandarin, back to Singaporean to it's like there's no more English. It's like all of a sudden this accent comes out of nowhere. And I'm like, what?
Is she still speaking English though?
So those
Partly. All right.
it'll be
Okay.
like, oh, it was good to see you, but then I'll be, oh, and I'm like, oh, okay, and then all of a sudden, halfway through a sentence, they start speaking Mandarin, and I'm like, I know all of them, and when they're
do.
not together,
Yeah.
everyone speaks English, like Englishing, like we're talking, but when they're together, all of a sudden, with the accents come out, the Mandarin
It
comes,
just
I'm like,
switches over.
yeah, like it's like a
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
So-
But there was a
Well,
guy
well,
called, I think John Barrymore, I think his name was.
Right.
I think he is American,
Yes.
but he's got Scottish ancestry and his parents are Scottish. And when he speaks to them without even realizing it, he reverts, he completely changes to a Scottish accent.
Oh,
It's
wow.
not, he's not even
Yeah.
acting. He's all,
That's very
whatever. And
He's
then
a Canadian, I
like,
think, actually.
about, is he Canadian? Oh, okay.
I think so, yeah, because he was also in the Doctor Who series as well, and you also have David Tennant.
Oh yes, that's the
who's-
chap.
who-
Is he? I thought he was okay. Is he Canadian?
So,
All right, fine.
yeah, he was in that. David Tennant has come back to be Doctor Who again, which is really
Oh,
exciting.
let's talk
for
about
us.
Doctor. I remember
Well,
I
that's
remember
good.
like the Doctor Who
But-
with the big long scarf and the big frilly hair when I
But
was a kid. That's
he's
the only
just
Doctor
come.
Who I remember.
He's now this woman that was in it is now morphed back into David Tennant. I think for three.
Is David Tennant back? I wasn't aware he was
Yeah,
back.
for 3 episodes, as far as I know, anyway. But
Oh, okay.
he
All right.
isn't, a diehard Scot, and when he's just speaking normally, people say, "Well, what's wrong with you?" Because they just assume that he.
But he never speaks with his a
Yeah,
normal
he
accent in movies
does.
and things. It's quite
No,
extraordinary.
not in movies.
Often.
So it's all no.
Well, not in
it's-
movies, yeah.
Yeah, but when you just hear him in interviews, people say, "Well, what's wrong with you?" You know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, here I got
Which
you.
is-
I've got you one better. Laurel Harold.
that-
I can't even. The guy who played House.
Hugh Laurie.
That's
Hugh
what I was
Laurie,
going for. You,
yeah.
Laurie.
You were trying to say Laurel and
British.
Hardy, weren't you?
Yes, that's right. You, Laurie, is
That's his
British.
age.
But every
He
Oh,
sudden,
certainly
really?
is.
but
we
so yeah,
we didn't
no,
know that, Stephen.
trust me, the Americans didn't know that, and they don't know he was a comic in the UK.
Yeah,
So
but
as
Brian
smart
Lowe,
assness as you
Stephen.
want, when we all saw him on House, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then when I was in the UK, I was watching something on television. And there was Hugh Laurie, and I'm like, oh, he's British. But in the States, he has this thing, and now he's on something on HBO where he has his little British accent, and he's funny. but he played House, which is a very serious role, and nobody that knew that he was British had a clue. I mean, like everyone in America just figured he was an American actor, and which is really funny if you watch some of the actors here. The guy that was in, I can't remember. I can see his face. I don't know his name. I'm not into actors or actresses.
Give us some clues.
Yes, he's a white guy. He's really tall.
Great.
No, so yeah, right. So, but I'm just saying, there's a whole bunch of them that come across the pond, and they all have to, do their American accent, and then you'll watch them on some British talk show, or you'll watch them in an interview, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're British, or you're Scottish, and it's very interesting that you think that everybody that's an actor is from America.
There are so many of them. There's
and Graham Norton is where I find out who's who.
Well, what about you, Roald? Because you spent a lot of time in the US, as you've told us before. You slip straight into
New York.
America?
He spent a lot of time in New York, just so we're clear.
Do I slip what?
Thank you. Do you sort of slip into the Americana when you with your accent? Because obviously it's a sort of a busman's holiday for you, sort of all these different accents.
The interesting thing for me is growing up, my father used to call it aluminum, and that wasn't because he was trying to be American or anything like that. He just believed that the provenance it should be called aluminum.
Right.
And I grew up calling it aluminum, and people said to me, no, it's aluminium. And I said, no, it's aluminum. My dad told me it was aluminum. And I grew up with that. The other thing is he always used to say to me, you can't, a V8 doesn't have a bonnet. It's got a hood, right? He was very pro that way. He loved his American muscle cars. And he said, that thing at the back, Henry Ford put a trunk on the back. That is not trunk. A boot. Yeah. That's not a boot. The boot's the thing you put on the end of your, but he was an American. So it's quite extraordinary. So I had this really strange upbringing, and he always wanted to get to Kalamazoo, Michigan. He never got there, but he just wanted to go to Michigan, stand by the sign and say Kalamazoo. I think he was like an American in exile, my father. So I had this very weird, that's how I started. I started with this sort of misguided identity. Now, as far as my accent goes, now most of the time I stick with what I am, but there are certain words that I prefer. I don't like to call it a petrol station. I like to call it a gas station. It just sounds better to my ear.
Honey, it doesn't sell gas, it sells petrol.
Yeah, but it sells gasoline. So, hey.
In the States it does, yeah.
And there are so many. I look at it this way. If I like a word and I like the way people are saying it, that's what I'm going to do. If I have pipes going through my property, I don't root them. Hang on. I don't root them.
Such a tart, honestly.
They pay me millions of dollars. What can I tell you? You don't route pipes through somewhere. You route it. It just sounds better to me. And I don't have the thing that's in my house. It's not a router. That sounds obscene. It's a router. Right. There are little things like that which I've hung on to. But for the most part,
I got one for you.
Tell me.
When I'm in Europe or anywhere outside the United States, it's Adidas. And when I'm in the United States, Adidas. Adidas. It's pronounced Adidas.
Oh yeah, Adidas.
Adidas, right?
Yeah,
because here's what's funny. I actually bought a pair of Adidas the other day, and I said, "Oh, you have Adidas?" Because I was just on the phone with somebody from overseas, and we were talking about them in general. He's like, "Who?" I go, "Adidas," and he looked. He goes, "Adidas." I was like, "Right, no, it's properly pronounced Adidas, but in America you pronounce it Adidas. Even in the commercials they pronounce it Adidas because Americans just can't wrap their head around Adidas."
See, Steve, I will give credit where it's due. There are certain things Americans are spot on with, like Nissan. Right. That's correct.
Right,
but when it comes to Adidas, his name was Adi Dassler, and he had a brother, Rupert or something, that started Puma. They were in a little Puma in a town in Germany.
They're across the river from each other.
Correct. And they were the Dassler brothers, and it's Adidas. It's definitely not Adidas. That's for
I know.
sure.
So I've got everybody now saying Adidas when they say they like my yellow Adidas. I'm like, no, they're Adidas. And they go, is that a different? I go, yeah, there's a very special brand. If you just read a history book, you'd know it. So, but when I was in Australia the first time, 100 years ago, we were going. I went, oh look, and my buddy goes, oh, I love Adidas, and I'm like, yo, Bubba, and he's like, yeah. So and then he told me the story. I went and found the book, read the whole story, and I said, ever since like 1993, I call them Adidas. So, it's like people look at me like I have three heads. And if I did, I could make it in a movie, but
You are correct.
So
Thank you.
we have the same thing here. That's called IKEA.
Is that
Oh
IKEA.
IKEA?
my lord!
IKEA. Yeah. So it's
IKEA. Okay.
IKEA. IKEA. Yeah.
I think we're doing this whole
Really?
show about
People,
language. I like
is
it.
that what they call it? What?
IKEA.
I've always called it IKEA. I must say. I
IKEA.
don't
Yeah,
know.
but IKEA because that's just the way that it's the letters are formulated in Dutch. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh,
when my kids were a lot younger, when they were like at primary school, um, they didn't know any of the nursery rhymes or any of the fairy stories and stuff in
Oh,
Dutch.
stop it. Fairy
They only
stories, really?
they only knew they only knew them in English. So there was always this thing like like they'd say, "Oh, it's Cinderella," and they'd say, "Cinderella? Who's Cinderella? You mean Astapusta?" He said, "No, we mean Cinderella. It's called
oh,
Cinderella." So
I think Ostapusta sounds dirty, and I'm going to make a porn movie
it
now called
does.
Ostapusta.
yeah,
Can we bleep that
Astapusta.
out? That doesn't sound right. Can we get
I
rid
know,
of that?
Yeah,
really.
Yeah,
Kids are going to be
yeah,
running to their parents, "Daddy, Mommy, Ostapusta." They'd be like, wash their mouth out
Daddy,
with
I heard
soap.
this new
Astapusta.
fairy story. Can you tell me what it's about?
Don't say that word again.
I
Yeah,
love it. Ostapusta. This is going to be, I like that.
Astapusta.
Hasta
Yeah,
la
Actually
vista.
sounds,
Hasta
that's,
pusta.
that sounds
yeah,
like a porn movie. I like Fritz the Cats in 1972. We're going to make Asta Vista of 2023. I like
It's
it.
yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Hasta la vista. Hasta la pusta. Come on, Wow.
I like that. So this whole
Yeah,
show's on language. I like this.
but this is the crazy thing, because my kids were sort of brought up speaking Dinglish, because my ex, she said to me, don't teach them your bad Dutch, and she didn't mean all the bad words that I'd learned. Obviously, you learn them as the first word you ever learned, but
Right.
mainly because of my pronunciations. So my kids were sort of brought up with, always spoke English to them, and so my ex always spoke Dutch to them. So we ended up with this language in between which I was called Dinglish, which is Dutch and English sort of stuck in between. So yeah, we have some very strange conversations. I had to think about that, Steve, when you were talking about talking about with Cheryl that
Yes.
my kids, and if we're out somewhere, we'll have this Dinglish conversation,
Mhm.
and and then people won't, if you're in a restaurant or somewhere and people come along and they don't know whether or not to speak to you in English or in Dutch, so but evidently, as
Well,
soon as I open my mouth and say two words in Dutch, everybody speaks to me in English.
English is when
And
we
when
go
you're in
out
the
to,
UK, they think your accent sounds odd, do they?
Yeah, yeah. A New Zealander, Aussies I've had, South African, those that people have said. Yeah, a
God,
see,
dickhead is what somebody called me once. That mu- that
and
mu-
that's only
that, mu-
with affection.
that
So
must be a language somewhere, I'm sure.
it is a language somewhere. But no, see, with her, because she speaks Mandarin, we go to a Chinese restaurant or any restaurant that's Asian, and then like she just orders doesn't even need a menu, right? Because she orders like authentic food and they make it. Because apparently, if you're not white and you're Asian, because like I was talked about before, they think everybody's white, whether you're black, you're green, they don't care. If you're not Asian, you're white. Full stop. That's
All
that's
right.
it, right? So
Asian, not
if
Asian. Okay.
right, so
Right.
there's
Yeah.
white
Yeah.
and Asian. That's it. That's how they see the world. So we go to
Okay.
an Asian restaurant and they speak in Mandarin, and she'll be like, "I've already ordered it." I'm like, What did we order?" And she goes, "Oh, you'll love it." And it's like a beef or whatever. But yeah, I don't like, but they do that. They literally switch, and anybody Asian will start speaking to her in Mandarin. It's very weird. Where like Rachel, one day you'll actually meet her because she couldn't, like I said, make the show today. But she's Korean. So the Singaporeans, and I've noticed this over the years traveling there. Singaporeans look one way, Vietnam people look another way, Filipinos look another way, Thai people everyone looks different. Chinese, Singapore, they all
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And then I've had some friends of Asian persuasion that you can't tell where they're from. Like I have a Japanese friend, and when you look at her, you're not quite sure. So she'll go to a Chinese or Korean place, and they'll start speaking to her, and she'll be like, "I don't know, Japanese." So it's very
Right.
interesting because people are somewhat biased when they walk into their little world. Like
Yeah.
we presume everybody that's white speaks English. As
Oh, it's
wrong
funny.
as that is, right? That's very true, right? Everybody that's white speaks English. Not true. Everybody
Did you
that's
see
black
did you
speaks
get
something
involved in
else.
all this blow up about Richie Sunak? And there was a thing, I think, on the Daily Show, and
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, on the Daily Show, and there's a guy who does, I think one of the segments in between,
Right.
who's, I think he's definitely is Asian,
Okay.
and he said he's not Asian, he's not. He's,
Was he talking about Richie?
he was talking about Rishi
Rishi.
Sunak. Yeah, he said
Well, he
because,
isn't Asian. He's of
yeah,
Asian
exactly,
descent.
Right.
yeah.
That's how I look
So
at it. He's British. That's how I
Right.
look at it. Yeah.
yeah, but it seems to, for some strange reason, there seems to be, everybody wants to adopt him, or apart from the Brits who want to get rid of him again. But
Yeah.
everybody, the Indian government says, "Oh, he's one of ours,"
Right.
and he's Asian, and then people from Asia, the other, a little bit deeper into Asia, say, "No, he's not an Asian. Doesn't look anything like us." He's
Well, I mean, looks wise, they may have a point, but I mean, he isn't Asian. He
Right.
is.
yeah,
He's of Asian descent. I know people. It's a bit of a sticking point because here people say, if you're white, how can you be African?
Right.
This comes up quite often. I don't really consider myself African because I wasn't born here, and I
yeah.
clearly, I
Is it not
have
a place
lack
of birth
tan.
then, Roald?
Hmm?
I think that's
What's
a
that?
place of birth. It's a place of birth, isn't it? Because
I don't
I,
know. Well, it's
They,
it's interesting, Dan, because yeah.
I can get a Dutch passport easily now because I'm old, and when you're younger, it's slightly more difficult and more expensive. But
Right.
I still, if I was to get a Dutch passport, because I've been living here for 36 odd years, I would
Right.
only consider myself to be a plastic Dutchman. I wouldn't consider myself, for some reason, when I sort of like I cheated.
I don't know what, but this has come up a lot in this country here in South Africa with the millions of people, different people we have.
Yeah.
And let me give you, I'll tell you a story. There was a golfer called Gary Player. You've heard of Gary Player?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Gary Player had a brother called Ian Player. Now, Ian Player, I think he was slightly younger than Gary. By the way, Gary is still alive, just in case anybody's wondering. Ian, he's like a nature guy. He's an environmentalist. And when I was a kid, back in the whole anti-apartheid days, I used to have dinner with a family that were very much a part of what they called the Black Sash movement. It was like an anti-apartheid underground thing. And Ian Player was there. And regularly they would have all kinds of guests. It was a family. They loved to bring people over. And on one occasion, there was this young guy. He was an African-American guy from Harvard, super bright. He actually came and taught at our school, our fancy school. And he was very prim and proper, but he was, obviously the man had a tan, but he was an American. And this whole topic of what is an African, what does that mean? Because this chap kept referring to himself as an African-American. And Ian would say to him, "But you're not African." He said, "There's nothing African about you." And he would reference the color. And Ian said,
Right.
"Okay, do you speak any Zulu? Do you speak any African language?" And then Ian, who does, rambled off in Zulu. And the guy just looked at him confused. And he said, "This is the problem." He said, "You don't speak the language. You weren't born here. You don't understand the food, the people, the culture. You've never lived here. You've never experienced it." And he says, "How can you call yourself an African?" And there was this fight. I was about 12 at the time, but there was this fight between these adults on the table. And the host just said, "Look, guys, let's just agree to disagree." And everybody retreated into their offended corners. But it was an issue. And as far as Ian Player was concerned, and I take what he said to heart. I mean, this man may have cosmetically had a tan, but there was nothing African about him. And he kept saying, "You got to stop calling yourself an African American." And you have to realize this was a sensitive issue. And I would imagine it still is a sensitive issue. You've got a white man telling a black man not to call himself something in the middle of apartheid years. It was tricky. It was a very tricky conversation. But the point remains, is this man actually African, or is he of African descent? By the same token, Ian Player said, he says, "I'm not European." He says, "I've never been to Europe. I was born here. I grew up in Africa. I was born in Africa. I am an African." And the same concern was expressed by this other fellow. So,
I think people try to put themselves realistically, I'm Jewish, but I don't run around going, I'm a Jewish American. I go, where are you from? I'm from New York. You know what I mean? It's like, I think people over the years have gotten, we go back to what we've talked about, but we're politically correctness and all those. Listen, you are what you are. Like if
Well,
you, and I agree with Ian. If you keep saying you're African American and someone says, "Great, tell me about that culture," or speak the
yeah,
language to me, and you don't, then theoretically, no, if you were born in America, you're an American. I hate to tell you that, right? And
yeah,
color, it goes back to something we spoke about in the very beginning. Color is just color, right? You're just a human being. And I
yeah.
think the biggest issue we have on the planet is people are worried about everyone's color, their sexual preference. Let's just enough. Like if we all just said, okay, we're good. Like if you're a human, great. You happen to be dark, I happen to be light, good. Or you happen to be, whatever the Asian people want to say they are, or whatever you got, right? It's who cares? Like
I
just
know.
it's like it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're all stuck on this little marble together. Just get along.
I can't imagine Idris Elba ever identifying himself as an African Brit. I've
Right.
never heard him say that. He's an Englishman,
No,
first and foremost.
but they would say
That's what he
that
is.
they would say they were Caribbean Brits. So,
So, you know,
Semantics.
tomato,
That's
tomato.
semantics. Yeah.
yeah,
You see,
yeah.
for me,
Because
what is more
they're
accurate
also
is
proud,
you're of that
proud of that.
descent. You're
Yeah,
of
they're
that
proud of
descent,
that.
but you're not.
They're,
But
they're
everybody
proud of
born
that.
in America, for me, that lives in America, you're an American.
Yeah.
You're not. You can. I understand why people do it. They love to
Yeah.
have little boxes and live in them, and it makes them feel good. I'm an Italian American, or I'm a
Right.
Spanish American, or whatever.
Right.
As an outsider, I look at that and I go, "You guys realize what this does is it divides you up. You're
Right.
all Americans. Rather say that of Spanish descent, of
Right.
Italian descent. It just
Yeah.
my take is you're not dismissing your culture, but man, you're there. It's fantastic. You're an American. Just enjoy it. Of Italian descent. There's nothing wrong with
Correct.
that. But
Yeah.
you're not
Oh,
Italian. You've never been to Italy. Many of you don't even speak the language. You
Right.
haven't lived there. You're not Italian. It's a different life being an Italian to be an American. I'm just saying.
we have a lot of issues here with, because obviously the Dutch were a colonial nation, and so we have people from all over the world who live here that were connected to, at some stage or another, some sort of Dutch influence. And they're second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation Dutch people, and they're finding that they have to change their names on job applications because they're being discriminated against because people think, oh, you can't be Dutch if you have a non-Dutch name. I mean that's just
That's a
absolutely
separate
shocking.
issue. Yeah, that's
That's
silly.
just absolutely shocking.
You should embrace that. One of the reasons why London, New York, London,
All the same.
what I love about London for me is the fact that there's just, so many different people. At one point, they said if you walk down, I don't know, Tottenham Court or one of the high streets, Oxford Street, 1 in 10 people would be speaking English. It's extraordinary. But that's why the food is so good. Can you imagine English cuisine spread across London?
No.
No. So the difference
Yeah.
the differences are
What
great.
what's the
That's what
national
makes
dish?
it a great, fantastic city.
What's the
Yeah.
national dish in the UK? The number one
Lamb.
national dish,
I
curry.
know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Curry, exactly.
Curry,
But that's
curry,
fine.
mate.
But
Yeah.
I love that.
Tikka masala,
But
whatever
that's
that is.
fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
absolutely.
Steve was just talking about, his wife, and look, the Asian foods. There's just a plethora of such great food. You should embrace it. You should enjoy it. London's got this massive Asian community, all kinds of food. So when you go to London, you go, I'm going to be able to get some good grub. I'm not looking for English food, that's for sure,
Right.
which is fantastic.
But
But
you
at
know
the
what's
same
funny?
time, if you've grown up there, you're English
Right. But here's what's
of
funny.
whatever descent.
When I have friends that go there that have never been, they go, "Where do I get good fish and chips?" I'm like, seriously, go to Epcot. When fish and chips, go to Epcot. Like London is like going to New York or LA. There's a whole bunch of little communities there with food from everywhere. That's where you're going to
Right.
go eat. You want fish
Yeah.
and chips? They all want a warm beer and fish and chips. I'm like, seriously? So when we
Oh,
used to have an
the warm
office in
beer's
Ireland.
okay.
It was the same thing. Well, yeah, we used to have an office in Ireland. It was across the street from Guinness. When anybody would come visit, they're like, "I want to
Oh,
go
it's
to
a good.
Guinness,"
Go,
and I'd be
go,
like,
go to
"Seriously,
Guinness.
this is what you're here. You want to go to Guinness and Jameson. Those are the two things they wanted to do
Wow.
It's a nice tour.
while they were there." So
It's a nice tour. The Guinness factory.
I will tell you
Like,
something because we were in a place called the Digital Hub, and
Yeah,
because of
I've
that,
been
we
in
had
there.
okay. No,
I've
no,
been
the
in.
Digital Hub is next to Guinness. Is
Yeah.
our office is in Digital Hub. So we with the Digital Hub had a pass. You could go into Guinness for free and go eat lunch anytime you wanted to and didn't
Yeah.
pay. And you could also
Wow.
you could just keep doing the tour. So you took the tour once. It was very nice. We had the food at Top of Guinness. It was, and then it was like, we're good. I went to Jameson and it was very nice, but I'm like, all right, I've done that. Now what? Like, I don't need to go. So every time somebody comes, I want good fish and chips. And I'm like, you're in Ireland. This is not fish and chips place, guys. So they're
No.
like, what do you guys get here? And I'm like, there's a really good Indian place around the corner. And they look at me like, there's a what? And I'm like,
Can I say the best part of Ireland for me had nothing to do with the food? All the food is
was it
whatever
the
it is.
leprechauns?
You know, this is going to sound weird, but all the little places I stopped at, this to me is what's great about Ireland.
Right.
Every place I walked into, any sort of cafe or little shop, I walked in and the people made me feel like they'd known me for decades. I
Yes.
don't know how the Irish do it. I haven't a clue what it is. I just,
They're all
hello,
fun.
young man. And it's the most, if you haven't been to Ireland, I can't
gotta go.
explain how that feels.
Yeah.
So yes, they've got
I
leprechauns.
was a bit apprehensive the
Did
first time
you
I
go to
went.
the Leprechaun Museum? I had a
didn't.
friend that we
I
got there to
didn't.
go. Did you go to the Leprechaun? And they had this mega rocking chair outside of it. It was hysterical. The people I know at the IDA probably right now are like, thank God someone's advertising about Ireland. Great place to do business, everybody. If you need any information, reach out. We'll give it to you. But anyway, I love Ireland. Ireland, it was
I do
just,
too.
we loved it. We would stay in Dublin and then we would go to wherever we had to go from Dublin, but walked everywhere. People were friendly. The
They're
only thing
super
that blew
friendly.
me
Wow.
that blew me away my first
Wow.
time there was that their Ubers are cabs. All the cabs are tied to Uber. So when I
Oh.
called for an Uber one day, a cab showed up and the guy goes, "Hey, are you Steve?" And I'm like, "Uh-huh." He goes, "Oh," he says, "I'm Uber." And I'm like, "How?" And he said, "Oh, the cab made a deal with Uber." And so all the cabbies are tied to Uber. So it's a
Makes
very
sense.
cool, but everyone's friendly. Everyone, like, eat the
They're very
food no matter
friendly.
where you go. Nice people are not. It was just, I was like, wow. Like I would live there and not give a second thought to
Yes,
it.
I would
It's
too.
that I
Absolutely.
live in the countryside, couldn't be bothered, but it was one of those places where like I could live here and never even worry about that. Go back and forth to the United States, which is a 6-hour flight. So
I used to say to my wife, for me, Ireland is the smallest big country I've ever been to. It
yes,
feels immense, but
Yep.
obviously it's tiny, but it feels immense. No
Yep.
idea how they do that. What were you going to say about Ireland, Dave?
No, but the first time I went, I was slightly apprehensive, because my accent gives me away a little bit, I think. And going deep into the south and being by fault of birth, I suppose, or by default, church of England Protestant, I thought that may be an issue. Never came up. They couldn't give a monkeys. But the other way round, I remember my mother telling me when she was a small girl, she wasn't allowed to play with Catholic children. It was a
wow,
real no-no. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Really?
And they have the same thing here in parts of Holland as well, where they say the Dutch say if there's a Catholic and a Protestant sleep together, the devil sleeps in between. So
really a
there's,
three-way. Well, there's another movie we're gonna do.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And
I will,
you thought Asta Pusta was funny, but there you
I
go.
know. That's the push
Yeah.
and the
So,
devil sleeps
but
between us.
Dave,
I was absolutely amazed. I agree, Roald. I was absolutely amazed
but
of how generous people were. I think in
yeah, but
everything.
I will say one thing. I was in London in, is it the Kilburn area? It's the
Kilburn,
Irish. It's quite an Irish
Kilburn
area of
High,
London.
yeah,
Is it-
Kilburn High Road.
yes. Okay. So I was there with a mate of mine, and he was born and bred here in South Africa. Obviously, I was born in London, and we met up the one year, and it happened to be St. Patrick's Day, and we were wandering down the street, and this little 4-foot leprechaun, nothing Irishman screams across the road, "Are you British?" And I knew exactly what was about to happen. And before I could stop my friend from saying anything, because he was very keen to shed his South African image and make out that he was now an Englishman, he wanted to do, "I'm in London, I'm English now." He said yes. And I just, no, I pushed him aside. And a few profanities were expressed. And he looked at me and I just went like, "Just come with me." And they grabbed me, friendly. And we went into a pub and yeah, it was quite an evening, but they didn't want to know my friend at all. Yet I was the Englishman. I said I was from South Africa, so that was
Right.
fine. But he said he was from. So we got it around the wrong way.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
quite
well,
extraordinary.
I have Dutch
Never
friends who
paid for a
go
drink the whole evening. Yeah.
Dutch
yeah.
friends who go to England, and they say, "Well, any advice?" And I remember that from like when I was very young, when I first was a teenager, started going back and forth to Holland, taking Dutch people back, for family and friends and for holidays. And I said, well, number one rule, just make sure before they even ask you, just say you're Dutch, so they don't think you're German.
Oh dear.
Because
Oh,
yeah,
dear.
because the Brits and the Germans just go off on one. So
Well, they still have memories of 70 years ago, so there's a little stuff going on.
There's a
yeah,
few things
yeah,
they still
yeah,
haven't.
There's some
Yeah.
unpleasantness that happened way back in the day that the young
yeah.
kids don't remember because they don't teach it in school.
No,
So,
absolutely not. I
Yeah.
mean, even here in
Because
Holland,
it
I mean,
never happened.
yeah, they don't teach it here in Holland either. It's very,
it's
it's very sort of,
Really?
it's
Nothing.
very, it's, yeah. Well, obviously they have the Remembrance Day here and Liberation Day and everything else, but it's
No one cares
very.
about that. Let's be honest.
No,
When
no.
you're a
I mean,
teenager.
I think most people get their any sort of idea of exactly what's happened by watching History Channel. So, but
well, look at it
You
this
see, that's
way.
the problem.
it's
Yeah.
not.
People are not
It's
going to
not
watch
the.
that. Kids don't
I
watch
know.
that. Like,
They
It's
don't
not.
watch any, they
History
don't watch,
Channel.
they don't read, they do nothing. And then
Yeah.
Yeah.
December 7th is coming up, and I'm sure no one December 7th is just a day because everybody who was there, so to speak, is it getting to the point where they're going to be dead soon. So there won't be a December 7th. It's almost going to be in 100 years from now. 9/11 will be forgotten because no one's alive. They're gonna be like,
Well,
oh yeah, there's something
Hang on. Just
happened.
let me think a
it won't
second.
be. It won't be
Wait a minute.
forgotten
Hang
by
on. Hang on.
me
December.
because that was
Hang
the
on.
day
Don't tell me. Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, December 7th.
Pearl Harbor.
It
Yeah.
was Pearl Harbor.
Pearl
Am I
Harbor.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
December 7th.
1944. What? 41.
42, I thought. 41 or
42.
42. Yeah,
I'm sure. Okay.
Pearl Harbor. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Well,
my point
not.
is like most people don't even like December. I mean, we don't. There's nothing we do, but it's kind of like 9/11 now. Like it's 20 years plus, and we have remembrances on every day,
Yeah.
which is very cool. But you can
Right.
see there that the first 5 years was like these mega things, and they were live
Yeah.
on TV, and now it's just
Yeah.
going smaller and smaller. And
Yeah.
before you know it, in another 20 years, there'll be 3 people there, and that'll be it. And
I have very mixed feelings about 9/11 because I'd been in hospital. I found out really quickly I had this intestinal cancer. I had
right.
to go under the knife really quick. The day that I came out of hospital was 9/11.
Oh wow.
And so I came home and then my phone was going but I was sort of, drifting half in and out of whatever it was, that you're still like literally post hospital, post operation drugs and stuff that's still in your system.
Right.
And I remember I came downstairs eventually late in the evening, and the whole family was there, obviously, because I'd just come out of the hospital.
Right.
And they're all sitting around. And I remember I just cried and cried and cried
Mm.
because, and they would say, "What's the matter? What's the matter? You're okay. Your operation was successful, blah, 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 blah."
Right.
And I said, "Well, yeah, but I just been through all that crap. And
Right.
now somebody's trying to destroy the world for myself
Right.
and my kids, you know."
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I have very, very mixed feelings because it was a joyous day that I came out of hospital and got through all the medical crap that I had before.
Right.
But it's also on that same day. So it's certainly a day I will never forget. But
Gotcha.
for
I don't
not
think
for
anybody
the
will.
not
Yeah.
for
No,
the
I don't.
same reason, not for the same reasons as Americans, obviously.
Yeah.
But
No,
but
it's just
it's
different
amazing how you can talk to anybody, not necessarily Americans. You can say, "What were you doing on
Mhm.
9/11?" And I
Yeah.
reckon most people can tell you. I was on a train. This is the weird thing. I was on a train in the middle of the Karoo, which is a desert here in South Africa.
Right.
Long train. We were doing one of these corporate things, and I was the DJ, and I was playing music up and down the carriages, and it was crazy, and it kind of killed the party. That's all I'm going to say, because suddenly
You think?
people were coming and saying, "Look what's going on," and I had one of these tiny little TVs. I was one of the few. I
Right.
actually had one, a tiny one, and you could just sort of see, like CNN and stuff on the
Right.
TV. And we weren't quite sure what was going on, and there was a lot of confusion. But I mean, I know this is very self-serving, but it destroyed the party. That was the end of it. I mean, we were
It's a
like,
good way to
"Well,
look
we
at it.
can't party now. Look what's just happened." You
Well,
know?
if you ask people in like the 60s, where were you when Kennedy got shot? They can tell you. Or in the 80s about the
Yeah.
Challenger, where were you when the Challenger blew up? Right. So
Oh,
it's almost like
yeah.
every decade has something where someone's going to be like, where were you? Or you lived through
Okay.
many of them. Like, so I was too young to remember Kennedy getting killed. So, but I do
No,
know
I
where I
can
was when the
remember that. I can
Challenger
remember
was
that Challenger, I
Challenger was
remember.
bad. I
Kennedy.
Post
I
was
9/11,
can
I remember. Yeah, all that stuff. I remember
remember.
when the plane went down in the Hudson where I was. So, you know what I mean? It's just,
well,
I think, yeah,
Kelly. Yeah,
you
I
remember
remember
all that
that
stuff.
too.
That was
That was
wild.
some serious flying.
He was really, and then somebody said to me, I don't get what's going on. I go, what do you mean? They go, all these people are helping. I go, this is New York. They said everyone hates each other because, and I had this conversation last night with somebody because they had to take the train somewhere. And they said, I sat down and this lady screamed at me. And I'm like, listen, there's 25 million people in a place that was designed for like maybe 5 million. I said, now you're not in your car, you're in a metal can and you have to sit next to 10 million strangers every day and they're having a pissy day. And then they go, but they were loud. And I go, right. Because in New York, the louder you are, shuts people up and they think you're crazy and they're not going to engage with you. Even if they like want to fight you and you start screaming at them, they're going to leave you alone. You're like, this is a crazy person. I said, so they yelled at you? I said, what happened after? Nothing. They go, there you go. They vented. We're good. And I said to my friend, I said, in New York, that's how we are. However, when a disaster happens, all of a sudden the city's like, oh, we have to
Yeah.
help each other because everyone's
Mm.
stuck on this little piece of land that it's either that or you die, right? So they all help each other. So it's very interesting. It's a different mindset, I think. I don't know if it's elsewhere. I've never really seen that kind of like people do a 180 like that when things go wrong. So, but what do I know? I just
I
sit here
don't
and look
know.
pretty all day.
Well, the closest thing I have is was in '95 when the Rugby World Cup happened. We had just had our first democratic elections here, and bear in mind what we had just come out of. I mean,
Right.
look, apartheid wasn't a picnic, trust me. I mean, and I'm on the right side of the fence, so I can't even.
Right.
I never imagine. I can only imagine. So I don't want to, whatever. So things were still very sensitive. There was still talk of a potential civil something going on in the
Right.
country. Then we had the Rugby World Cup. We won it, and everybody loved everyone. So that was. It's not quite the same as what you're saying, but there was this massive
No, it was
180
a, it was a,
There's a
where
unity.
everybody just loved
Yeah.
everyone,
it was a
and it
pivotal moment. I
lasted
think.
about 24 hours.
I was just gonna say there's a unity for about 15 minutes, and then after that,
And then
everybody's like,
boom,
screw
the
you.
next
Yeah.
day.
Well, after 9/11, I think the unity lasted until about mid-October. Nobody beat horns. The city was just quiet. It was just very surreal. And then I remember I was walking somewhere. It was towards the end of October, and all of a sudden I heard honk, honk, and I'm like, uh-oh, the city's coming back. And literally the next day, the horns were going, the siren, everything. But for that first, say, 30 plus days, 40 days, it was quiet as a church mouse. It was, people were still like trying to get over it. But when I
That
heard
was
that
sweet.
horn, like the end of October, I was like, okay, we're back. It
A
was
quiet
just,
New York
Yeah.
City.
yeah, that
Yeah.
it was almost like an
Either
apocalypse
that,
movie.
or you could say that they're horny New Yorkers. But there you
Well,
go.
we're always very horny in New York. So there you go. Boom, boom. Thanks. I'm here till Thursday. Tip the wait staff, and don't forget to try the
Yeah,
deal.
well, I thought I'd get that one in early.
I know. I'm very
You got
good.
it
Very
in.
good. You got it
And now
in.
take it out. Yeah,
Congratulations.
we can.
Now, thanks for slowing up the show. So,
It was good.
Well,
Wow.
we
There we go.
we were slowly slipping into
there you
this
go.
another New York love fest. So
Listen,
I
all our
thought
shows are going to be New York Love Fest. So there you go. That's the
I'd
way it
just
works.
save the world from that.
Okay,
Okay.
fine. Well,
You ever been,
Mr.
Dave?
Sorry.
You ever been to New York?
No, unfortunately, I haven't because Stephen
Well,
won't
there's
pay
the
my
problem. That's
There's
exactly
the
what's going
issue
on
right
here.
away.
Well, that's
Stephen won't pay my
why you're
airfare.
not feeling. I get it. Okay, no,
All
that's
right,
fine. I
yeah.
get it now.
You know,
Yeah.
he promised me the whole world, and including
I sent you a globe. I don't know what
Yeah.
else you want.
yeah, but yeah, I had to shake it to get all the snow in it. But there you go.
Well, that's how it works.
Yeah, no, I'd love to go.
One day, my
Yeah.
friend, we will go. We will have dinner in New York, and we'll have it with Mr. Woods.
Here's a fun
Two of us
fact.
on- Yeah.
Steve can confirm this, but as
Yeah.
far as I'm aware, and it's such a random fact. As far as I know, the only place in the world where you'll find a bodega is in New York City. It's the only place. I don't think you get them anywhere else in the world.
I don't
It's a
think so.
Uniquely
In
New York City thing.
Every
Is
other
that correct?
corner. Yep, every other corner.
Yeah.
And
I mean, when I first got
what
there,
is a bodega?
well, let Steve tell you.
It's almost like a 7-Eleven with food. It's got everything. I mean,
But you
that's
know
the
what?
easiest way to
Sorry,
do it.
I have to add something. I went into
Sure.
my first bodega and I wanted to see what the fuss was about. Exactly. It's like a little store. And
Right.
then, hang on, there's some stairs going down,
Uh-huh.
and there's a restaurant down here. And then there's some stairs going up, and there's something going on up there. There's actually quite
Yeah.
some of them have got like 3 levels.
Multi-levels, yeah.
But
And then some are
a
just
tiny
one
little
level.
door on
Yeah.
the corner. And there's so much going on inside. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So
A
where does the
deli,
word
a
come from then?
supermarket.
Is the bodega? That seems to.
I don't
What's
know.
it?
We'll have to
Is
look
that a
it up.
Sounds
Yiddish?
Spanish.
Is that a
Yeah,
Yiddish
maybe.
word or?
I don't think
know.
it's Yiddish. Yiddish,
Is it Yiddish?
I don't think it's Yiddish.
No. That
Comments
sounds
below,
Spanish.
people, because we have
Bodega.
no idea about what a
Yeah,
bodega
please.
is.
If anybody knows what the origin of that, I'm fascinated to know.
That's
But
yeah.
Bodega.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't
Bodega.
know.
I
Yeah.
just
Oh, I
like
mean,
the way
you
that
just
it
know what
sounds.
it is.
it sounds like an Italian clothing store.
It could be. Well, the
But that,
bodegas in New York are very cool
But
because you can
anyway,
walk
these
into
are,
one. That's
this is
awesome.
like so Roll. What you're saying is just a door, and this like this Pandora's box of
yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of the most extraordinary things for me in that city. There's so much going on inside those buildings. You.
Yep.
What I'm saying is, I mean, New York is big, but geographically, maybe not. But obviously, it goes up, and you go, where are all these people? And then
Yeah.
you go into this what looks like a tiny little door on the corner of 32nd and Broadway,
Yeah.
and boom, there's a palace in there. It's
Oh,
I
so a bit
walked
like
past
a
the Kmart
But the
store.
bodegas have changed now. So now when
Oh,
you go into them, they're a little bigger. The doors are a
yeah,
little bigger.
right.
And you walk in. So you'll walk in and you may walk into there's one that I know where around the corner from where I used to live. You walk in and it's like a buffet, like just endless food, 2 stories. And then if you need milk and cookies or what, they're over here. And if you need something,
Crazy.
it's over here, and you can go
Yeah.
and they have tables. And then we went on our last
the
trip to New
origin,
York. It's
Steve,
a small little one.
So much
Stephen.
hidden space.
Yeah.
Their origins
Extraordinary.
then would be like more like a corner shop. Then is that
Pretty
do you
much,
think
yeah, basically.
yeah.
But
But
a corner shop with food, but
Wow.
they're all different sizes now. We went into one the last time we were in New York, around the corner from the hotel, and you walk in and there's the guy making food for you. And then over on this side is, what do you need? Diapers, it's like the everything store. It's just wild,
yeah, that's
It's
very cool.
Yeah.
And none of them are the
yeah,
same. They're all different.
no, yeah, because they're all owned by different people.
Yeah, there's not a
There's no
franchise or
chain,
anything like
right?
that. No, yeah.
Yeah, there's no chain that says,
And it's
"Hey,
it's usually a family-owned thing, I think.
Yep,
Most
pretty
of them.
much.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
There's a couple of them. One begins with a D. Dealistan. I can never pronounce it, but anyway, I think they have a little franchise throughout New York of their little bodegas. But pretty much
Okay.
every other corner or every corner will have a bodega now,
Well,
or a
it's
raised pizza. You
Extraordinary,
pick it.
extraordinary
Yeah,
city.
it's very cool. Well, Mr. Woods has got to go because Mr. Woods is now going to have a small Asian woman walk on his back and stick needles in his back. He didn't know that. That's our gift to him today.
Okay.
So yeah,
Awesome.
hello. Hey, how
Yes.
you doing?
Yeah,
And
you just-
we wish Rachel was here because she was our small Asian woman that was going to stick needles
Can't
in
thank
her
you
back.
enough.
So,
Yeah.
I know. Thank you. You're welcome. So we'll do this
So-
again. Hopefully, we're going to get you and Rachel on the same show, Kimchi Chick, because she's still.
Yeah,
we
'cause
did a
I had
whole
all
show
my
the other day on
K-pop.
K-pop.
I
Yeah,
had
we're
all my
ready.
K-pop trivia ready, and
All right, we're gonna do K-pop.
educated by my daughter. I was ready to go. So
All right,
next
we're going to
time.
try. I'm going to see what everyone's schedule is in a week or so. We're going to try to do a show before the Thanksgiving
great.
break for K-pop, and we're going to do a whole nother thing on K-pop because apparently it's a global sensation that David and I have no
Yeah.
clue about.
It is crazy.
So we've heard. I read it in a book.
Yeah.
David, would you like to say goodnight?
Good night.
Well, always a pleasure. How would you like to leave us today, my friend? Who would you like to leave us with?
Oh, you mean like a voice?
Sure, you could, or leave us yourself.
Okay. Well, this is later. Okay, everybody. It's been good knowing you, and I'll see you later. Okay. Hasta la vista. I know it's a cliche.
I like it. Hasta la vista, everybody. Cheers. Talk to y'all soon.
Hasta la pasta.
Oh, hasta la pasta, the porno movie we're going to make. Stay tuned.